just to test.
Rex Kim is the biggest piece of.
You're literally live.
Yes.
Because we literally talked about it. We're like, hey, you wanna go Saturday morning and play, like early? I was like,
I just got a notification. Rex is live.
Johnny Ray said hello. So does Z-Rod.
Z-Rod, what's up, man?
Johnny Ray's in. Koa Young.
oh gosh.
Ryan Medina.
You know Ethan Kloss is on Instagram.
100%.
Hashtag lefty swag.
Oh, Ethan Claus is on.
Yep, you knew that one was coming.
All right, so,
Xander's next because they're together.
all right, give us a minute, guys.
Yeah.
Hey, how's the sound? Can you guys, whoever's on live, how's the sound? Emilio said legends.
Next time, we're going to grab the stepping.
Should have.
That'd be cool.
I've been around a few years now.
Don't tell me you ain't been thinking about it.
Not just now.
No, this will be good though. I think.
Rex, you got thumbs up. I'm surprised you haven't got a middle finger yet. Nancy will probably give you one. Not being home, making her easy eats on the go.
Welcome to the shirts.
Sound is great. Z-Rod, all right.
Presents, but
Now
so it's
we
like
got
an
we got
ambassador.
17.
Almost. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be perfect. Yeah.
So what happens if I go sideways?
What does it do? Is it unlocked on your phone?
Yeah.
Is this mine or yours, Rex?
No,
That's
it
yours.
doesn't go sideways. It literally turns it sideways on the thing.
So
All
it's
right,
good.
guys. Thanks for tuning in to our first live Instagram podcast. We're at Al's Garage in Summerlin, in the patio. It's too packed inside with the Knights game going on. We got over here to the left, we got Shawn West, one of the original founders of LVR.
OG.
We got Josh Vidales, one of our newer additions. Josh coached at, played at University of Houston. How many years have you been here?
4 years.
He's been
Or
here.
for here?
Yeah, Vegas.
I've been in Vegas since 17, so 3 years.
So he's been here for a few years. He primarily coaches with our 12U team.
All around,
Okay.
infielding, hitting.
So you guys may have seen some of his video of the last practice, doing some of the infield work and some of the outfield work. Here we got Coach Evan Greusel. He's one of the OG founders as well. Been here for a long time. Most of you guys, I'm sure, know Evan. And we have Kink here. Kink's been with us for a couple years now. Kink coaches and teaches at Faith prior to moving back to Vegas. Kink also played at Faith. Prior to moving back to Vegas, he was at Lewis and Clark where he played. After he played, he also coached there, and he was their recruiting coordinator. So basically we decided to do this live Instagram podcast, if you will, because I think all of us kind of get a lot of questions from time to time on various baseball topics. Things like whether you should hold your kids back, recruiting advice, arm care advice, showcases versus tournaments, high school advice, just different different aspects of baseball. And so we wanted to kind of give a forum where the coaches can get together, discuss whatever the topic is for this session, and you guys can come in and ask questions live or ask questions in advance. So the first topic that we decided to tackle was probably one of the most commonly asked questions, which is, what can a player do to become more recruitable? And I think that question comes at all ages. It comes from 10, 11-year-olds. Obviously middle school and high school, you hear a lot more. I know that being involved with the 11U team that's turning 12U, a lot of those kids and a lot of those parents really make an effort to kind of instill and try to teach their kids, what they should do now to help them become more recruitable. So maybe we'll start left to right with each of the coaches maybe discussing their recruiting process, what their experience was, maybe a piece of advice here or there that they can give for kids in terms of demeanor, in terms of how they carry themselves, in terms of how they handle their warm-ups or whatever. So we'll start first with Coach Shawn.
What's up, fellas? How you doing out there? Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate this. We're going to get better at this as we go, but we would like to do this more and more as the year goes on and time goes on, because we think this is beneficial. From my personal experience with being recruited, I'm the oldest one out of the 4 coaches here. Evan's the next one. He's a year and a half younger than myself. So the recruiting process was completely different for us than it would be for Josh and Kink. We didn't have club ball, or at least I didn't. I'm born and raised Las Vegas, so we didn't have club ball here when I was coming up. So we had to rely on the high school coaches. I transferred out of El Dorado High School, even though it was a good program back then. I went to Green Valley High School my senior year just so I can get to college. Nowadays, kids move around high school to high school to chase that high school championship, the state championship. Back then, we did it to get to college. Now you use club ball, travel ball to get to college and play all the showcases and all the big tournaments provided by numerous entities across the country. So mine was purely on the word of Roger Fairless at Green Valley High School. Everyone relied on their high school coaches back then. And I was fortunate enough that I went in at the right time and made that transfer to do that. But if it wasn't for that, I probably would have went, a really low-end junior college and went that route through my college ranks. Back then, at least in the Vegas market, only the who's who really got looked at by 4-year schools. Everyone else was junior college. That's just the way it was. But things have evolved, and that's what we're trying to do with LVR, is to teach and help and expose and educate everybody so they can get to college. There is so many schools out there at different levels. You just got to find what works best for you and how to get there. The internet's the best thing to do that with, and then relying and trusting your coaches and work with them and be vocal and communicative of what you want, what your needs are, so on and so forth. So that's all I really have on this subject at the moment. But Josh, who's I believe the youngest or the most.
Yeah, I think I'm the youngest. You're a little bit older than me, right? Yeah. So. Yeah. So my process was a little different from Shawn's, just because I'm a little younger than him, a couple years. But
I was a freshman when he was born.
No, so if you don't know me, I'm from originally Houston, Texas. I'm about 25 minutes southeast of downtown, just for geographical. Yeah, literally. No, yeah, Port Texas. So in Texas we play sports year round, not only baseball. So multi-sport athletes: baseball, football, basketball, track. Whatever the case might be, whatever your talent is. You didn't limit yourself to one sport. Reason being is you wanted to be an athlete no matter what you do. So with that being said, I wasn't just always focused on, just baseball. I was focused on, getting bigger, faster, stronger for football, bigger, faster, stronger for baseball, and then just kind of, going from there. But the recruiting process was a little different for me in the fact of I wasn't a projectable body, if you could say. I know you hear that a lot from, coaches or scouts, or you read some on the internet and you see a guy that's 6'2", 185, 200 pounds, and you're like, man, this guy's a stud. I kind of relied on, the hustle, getting on and off the field, making sure I showed up way ahead of time to prepare myself for a game, staying healthy. Because I did play 2 sports, I took a beating in the fall and then had to come play, baseball in the spring. So just kind of understanding like what went into preparing yourself for whether you're at a showcase or whether you're in a tournament on the weekend. I didn't really take it as a big showcase or a big tournament. I took it, every game at a time, over and over and over again, and then you look up and then you're like, oh wow, like it's time to start the recruiting process. If you get too caught up in the social media of, oh man, this guy's going here, oh this guy's going here, then you kind of forget of where you're trying to go as your own personal baseball player. So the only thing I can really say that I kind of remember doing is just playing hard all the time, on and off the field, making sure I looked right. Didn't swag it out too much, like belt, socks, hat, match the team. Just pop fly to second baseman. I'm running down the line trying to get to second base until he catches the ball. Runner on, I'm on first base, 2 outs, ball hit to the outfield, in the air. I'm trying to score from first base. Like, just little things like that, guys. It's going to take your game to the next level, believe it or not. Even if, there's no one in the stands or there's a thousand people in the stands. You have to understand, you got to play your heart out every single game, because if you take it for granted and something happens, God forbid, but you never know if you get that chance back again. So just play as hard as you can without worrying about failure, and that's going to take you where you want to go, whether it be baseball, academics, football, or in life in general. Just go all out 100% no matter what. So that's all the advice I can give you on the recruiting process. So.
All right, so we'll switch over to Coach Evan. Meg actually has a good question, and I don't know if we want to start with that or we can address this after, which is, what year should you start your recruiting process?
Well, let's get to the questions when we get done with this. Okay, so for me, we're going on like 22 years ago was when I was in the recruiting process, so everything's way different. Believe it or not, no social media was around back then. But one thing that has stayed the same is first impressions. I wasn't the most talented player when I was younger, didn't throw the hardest. So we had to follow, the typical first impression guidelines. No bleached hair, look uniformed, either pants up, clean uniform tucked in, wearing the right shoes, hustling out of the box. That stuff hasn't changed from the coaches. A lot of the coaches that even were recruiting players when I was playing high school are still coaching now. So they're still looking for the same thing. And so I think one thing that gets overlooked is I think we overexpose kids today. I think they're going to every single showcase, and you may showcase well at one, and then the coaches are looking at you the next 10 you're at, and they're looking at what to cross you off. And I think that's another point to bring up is not only do you want to get on a college coach's list to follow, but you also don't want to be crossed off that list. And that's kind of, you can overexpose and be seen too much. So I'd be careful going to too many showcases. I think it's good to show up at a showcase, do well, disappear for a little while. But just make sure when you're on the field and you're wearing your uniform, shirt's tucked in, cleats are clean, hat's the right way, take the earrings out, take the necklaces off, take all the show stuff off, because coaches don't want to see guys that try to separate themselves from the team. They want to see guys that are uniformed and that look good, as well as always hustling on and off the field, busting your butt down the line, always giving effort. So that's something that I would really encourage kids to do, is throw some of that flair away, and just look the part. Just look the part and have a good first impression, and don't overexpose yourself too many showcases.
So I would have made Evan's team if I was playing back in the day.
Oh yeah.
All right, so Kink, I think, probably brings a very interesting and unique perspective, because not only did he play and during high school, I remember as he was going through the recruiting process, but he went on to play college baseball at Lewis and Clark, which was D2?
D3. Portland, yeah.
But immediately after college, or his playing days were over, kind of like what we had all predicted, he went on to coach at Lewis and Clark, and he also became their recruiting coordinator at the same time. So I remember talking to Kink back when he was like going to the fall classics, and he was going making these trips looking for players to fill out their roster. So go ahead, Kink.
So for my recruiting process, it was I was kind of, I feel like, me and Josh are pretty close, the same age. I feel like we were kind of in like an in-between phase. Like social media was kind of starting to go, and there was like a lot of recruiting websites that you could sign up for, and there was, like tournaments were going on, but some people were skeptical about it. So, it was kind of, I went more of the route of I didn't really go out a lot. There wasn't anything close to LVR, when I was in high school. And so mine was 100% based off how I played in high school. Thankfully, Faith, we moved up those last 2 years, which I think helped moved up to 4A. But, just like Josh was saying, and even Evan, like by no means did I ever, think I was gonna play in the big leagues. I wanted to, but I was 100% an effort and first impression guy. I think one of my best abilities, which I'll talk about for me going to college, but I was pretty smart, and I did really well in school, and I took that same kind of mindset to my baseball career with how I approached the game. I learned a lot from Evan. If you don't know, Evan coached me in high school, and I learned I learned a lot from Evan, though, just about from the pitching side of things and how to be a better catcher, managing a game, working with pitchers, learning about them. So that was a really big plus for me, which, again, you're not going to show up to the ballpark and see me as like I'm not a 6'2" guy, but I played the game the right way, and I did a lot of those intangibles that I think sometimes guys don't recognize. They're so worried about their power and, how they look, but that goes a really, really long way. And so I actually, I reached out a lot more to schools that were really good academically, just because my goal was to play college baseball, get as much of it paid for as I could, and get a really good education. And if that was as far as I got, then that was great. And actually, Lewis and Clark reached out to me after my junior year. I had a really good season, and they weren't even a school I had ever even heard of. I'd never even thought of going to Portland. And they had everything I was looking for. It was a great fit for me academically, and I was going to have a chance to play pretty early. So it worked out. But I mean, for me, and I'll kind of transition, I guess, into the recruiting side from my perspective I had. But it's just about making a good impression right away and doing all of those little things that even if you go 0 for 4 and strike out 3 times, you're still playing the game the right way. So like I could talk a little about, so like from a recruiting side of things, it was something I had to learn a lot about, because you're totally switching my mindset of, going from a player to a coach, what we had to look at. Obviously the very first thing, like I get a ton of recruiting videos, and that's one we could talk about later, because you see some really interesting ones. But right, like the very first thing anybody's gonna do, whether you think it's right or wrong, is hey, look at how, wow, that guy's big, or that guy has that guy's hitting tanks, that's the first thing that jumps out to you. But you also have to recognize colleges have needs, graduating class, what are you graduating, what positions do you need? One thing that I think all these guys would agree, you always recruit up the middle of the field. You always need middle infielders. They're, your most athletic guys, they can play other spots. You're always looking for arms, and you never have too much catching. So that was the first thing. And now the one thing I will say that I think is different with my school, it was a super academic school. That was our main focus. But there was plenty of times where I would go to an event, I'd see a guy, he'd do something really good, catch my eye, or maybe someone I had reached out to, and the first thing I would check was their GPA. At my school, if you did not have at least a 3.5 GPA, I had to cross you off the list. It did not matter how good you were. It's just my school was super academic, and that was our top priority. So grades really do matter. I know that's one thing coaches harp on, and you hear your parents say, but I can't stress that enough. That was the first thing that I had to check as a player or as a recruiter. And then from there, my job was I would call the player's coach. One of the things I noticed was, especially guys in California, they really didn't put their high schools in California anymore. It was usually like, what club team were they a part of? Because I wanted to know, if I'm calling your coach at this point, I know you're a good player, you have the grades to possibly get in. I want to know about you as a player and as a person. You spend 50, 60 plus games with a group of guys. You got to fit in with that group. You got to be a good person. You got to work hard. You got to be able to, be accountable. One of the reasons that we took GPA so seriously, aside from the academic, was if you're not putting in the effort in the classroom, I have to be, as a coach, I can't worry about having a guy that's not going to be eligible and then wasting a scholarship there. Baseball only gets 11.7 scholarships, at the D1 level, and, every other level has, different criteria, but, your grades say a lot about you as a person. So, without kind of rambling on still, I'd just say, focus on the accountability of yourself on all parts, your schoolwork, being a good teammate, how you carry yourself. Those are those kind of little things, that we would really try to focus on when we were looking at guys.
Yeah, just to segue off of that too, because when you brought up the high school stuff and how you kind of went about yourself at your high school is sometimes just what I've noticed on the coaching side of things since I started coaching is I've noticed okay, what if I go here because they're good? What if I go to this school because they're good and they're going to win a state championship? That's cool, right? That everybody wants a state championship, but at least where I came from is I went to LaPorte High School. It's a 5A school, big school, and there were big schools everywhere in Houston. It's a huge area, but you kind of took pride into where you went and try to go out and beat everybody in your district or everybody in your region. And it kind of, takes you back to when you're a little kid, when you first pick up a ball and bat, where, hey, let's go face these kids in this neighborhood. Let's go get our squad and let's just go play, sandlot baseball and just try to beat this other team that's from literally 3 streets over. I think that's kind of gone away, and hey, let's try to build this super team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just go beat everybody. Well, why not just become a leader at your school and try to get a group of guys to, go about what you're about and what the school's about, and try to compete with that team and try to beat that team on any given day. And I think that's what shows character and shows, being a leader. And I think that's what college coaches look at too, because they don't want somebody that's going to follow somebody.
Yeah.
You don't want followers in your program. You want people that
bounce around.
Yeah, you want people hey, you need to get your stuff done. Let's go. You want that guy. You don't want guys that just look around and, waiting for somebody to tell them what to do. You want somebody to, go out there and lead. And I mean, at least that's what, in my eyes, that's what I'm looking for as a coach. I know it's not on the college level, but
it tells you a lot about the person.
True, yeah. I think so too.
So LJ Abrego has a good question, which is, what age should I start doing PG showcases? So that's I think a good question, but I think kind of more important is, for the LVR coaches who coach at tons of PG type of showcase events, what kind of interaction have you had with coaches? What kind of questions? What kind of feedback? What kind of evaluation have you had seen from coaches of players that they're out there trying to recruit?
Well, so the first 2 questions we got on here was, 1, when should we start the recruiting process, and 2, when should you dive into the PG events or events like those? The first thing you need to focus on is bigger, stronger, faster. Before you start diving into recruiting process or showcase baseball, you got to have a tool. You got to be fast, you got to hit, or you got to throw. you got to have a tool that you want to showcase. Otherwise, it's not really a point to go showcase something. Now, with that being said, there's two reasons why you would do showcases. One is either to showcase your ability, or two, it's to kind of get your feet wet so that when it's time to showcase your ability, you're not nervous. You kind of have your feet underneath you. And so I've been a big fan of Perfect Game, and they've been really good to us. We've been doing PG events now for 6 years. We've developed a little bit of following from schools. There's usually anywhere between 5 and 15, 20 schools at one of our games, as well as other programs that have made their mark. So number one, you do want to get to those events by 14. You want to start your Perfect Game profile or show ball or any of the other ones that are out there. There's a lot of good ones out there. PBR is doing a great event in Georgia right now. But you want to start your profile so they can follow, because like I'll speak on Perfect Game. You'll have your page, they'll do your velocity, they'll do your videos, they'll do your highlights, they'll do all tournament. And if you check in with them twice a year, 3 times a year, they'll update, and coaches can go back and track, and they can kind of follow, at your freshman year, you were 80, your sophomore year, you're 84, your junior year, 88, and they can see the progression. So when you're younger, you want to get to those events because you want to get the nerves out. You're going to swing a wood bat most likely for the first time. You want to kind of get your feet wet in that situation to when you are ready to showcase. But I would tell parents, bigger, stronger, faster. Have a tool, whether it's speed, power, or an arm. Obviously, you want to learn the game of baseball, get coached the right way, get all that. But you got to have some sort of tool if you want to showcase, especially at the younger ages. I think one of the misconceptions in the recruiting process is, the big schools are out looking at guys. That's about 10% of schools. Most schools won't start their recruiting till late junior, if not early senior year, because they're waiting to see who falls through the cracks, late development. They want to see grades later. If you're an academic school, it doesn't mean no good to recruit a sophomore because we haven't seen your SAT scores, your ACT scores, GPA long enough. We want to see 3 years of high school. So I would just say focus on getting strong, healthy. If your arm hurts, shut it down. There's no importance of a 14U tournament. If your arm's hurt, sit out, take 2 months off, don't throw a baseball, don't go up here, don't go there. Just stay home, rest your arm, get strong. Because number one, if you're not healthy, you're not going anywhere. You can be committed in 8th grade, and if by signing day your senior year you're not healthy, you're not going to that school. So just work on a tool. Work on all your tools. Goes back to what Josh said about multiple sports. I grew up playing multiple sports, not necessarily all with the high school, but pickup games. I mean, we played pickup football, pickup basketball, stickball, tag, over the line. Like, we played games outside. We didn't have a lot of the social media or the internet connection you guys do now, but get out and be active. Do everything you can active. It helps with everything. So to end it, I would just say start early, but understand why you're doing it early. At 14, don't expect a scholarship offer. 14, let your kid have fun. He's gonna fail miserably. That's okay. We're gonna learn a lot from those failures, but get him working out. Get him, even if it's just body weight. It doesn't have to be weights, but get that body strong.
Oh, and just the difference between committing to a school and signing to a school, it's completely different. You can, like you said, you can commit as an 8th grader, and when that NIL comes out, which is National Letter of Intent, or NLI, National Letter of Intent. Yeah, right?
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you there.
Once that thing, and you sign that thing, that's when it's real. Okay, before that, if you commit, you verbally commit to a school, and something happens or you get in trouble off the field or grades sink, guess what? That scholarship's out of there, quick, fast, and in a hurry. So I just don't want people to get that confused, because you could be going to the greatest. You can go to Vanderbilt. You could be signing to Vanderbilt, verbally committed, and guess what? By your junior year, they found somebody with better grades, better work ethic, and now you're kind of SOL. So.
All right. Anything to add, Shawn?
I was going to take on whatever the next question was.
There's no other questions. We had somebody asked where Brad Stone is playing. UNLV. Yes, he's going to be playing at UNLV. The other question was Meg's question, which was how early should you start the recruiting process?
I think you should handle this question.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
How's it going for you?
Say hi to Meg.
Hi, Meg. How's it going? So I'll say from my experience, and Evan kind of touched on it, but with us being an academic school, we had to see those grades and your final transcripts. Now, with a grain of salt with your grades, now we're not going to wait till your senior year and like look at ceramics and underwater basket weaving and see what your GPA is. Like, we took at your core GPA, so your core classes, reading, writing, math, science, and that's what we really focused on. So I don't think, so I don't know the specifics of your question, Meg, but I'll address all the parts. I think number one, I think it's great as a freshman to come up with a list of maybe 3 schools that you, like your reach, we call them reach schools. What are like your dream schools, your 3 dream schools that it might be a little bit tough in a different area. Maybe it's a lot of money, maybe it's a really tough academic school, or maybe they just have a really great baseball program, and that's where your dream would be to play. So come up with 3 schools there. Then come up with 3 realistic goals of places that you could really see yourself going. Maybe they're close to home, whatever your criteria is. That's it's pretty open-ended. And then 3, I think that should start freshman year. I think kids need to have an idea of what they're looking for. And again, that's different for everybody. Maybe you, like, I loved being able to go to Portland and go to school up there. Like, I was born and raised here, so getting to experience something totally different was awesome. And, I wouldn't ever thought of doing that if it wasn't for Lewis and Clark. So I say your freshman year, have an idea of what you're looking for. And then as you progress into your sophomore year, I think sophomore year, you start to figure out a lot more about what you're interested in, what your talent level might be, where you could kind of see yourself fitting. And then junior year is when, I think you kind of have to start narrowing it down, and that's when you're going to start really getting more information from schools. You can reach, I don't know how all of this is changing, dates and everything, but, junior year you could reach out to schools and kind of let them know your interest. And then, honestly, I didn't commit. I'm trying to think. I did not commit. I remember telling you this, Rex. I didn't commit to Lewis and Clark until February of my senior year. So again, everyone's different, but I think having that idea of, okay, freshman year, this is where I'm interested in, and then starting to narrow down that list, I think that's a good game plan. And even, I know we have, our younger guys, 14, that's
what's up?
Something you guys can start thinking about. So,
all right. So, Vanson Baseball had a good question, which is, do coaches really look at your social media when making a decision?
Yes, they do.
That's the first thing in my inter meeting, that's the first thing that our coach asked for. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, everything. And they follow us on all of it, and we had to follow them back. So, yes, it's very important.
Nothing is deleted. Just because you delete it on your phone is not deleted, okay? You guys write that down, store it somehow, okay? If you're going to a major university or you're getting drafted, well, the draft has changed, but assume it was still like it was, and you're a high draft pick. They will invest tens of thousands of dollars to go through your social media history to find anything on you, so they can pay you less money than what your value is, or not even sign you or give you a scholarship or draft, because they don't want to have to deal with the consequences of the social media of today's world because you posted something at 14 years old. It's unfortunate. We're a country that was originally, innocent until proven guilty, and you can have second chances. But the way the world is these days, that's not reality. Reality is, if you said something at 14 years old, when you're in your 20s, you're still held guilty and responsible for that. So you got to be smart with what you're doing right now. So yes, social media is the devil to everything. You got to be very smart, you got to be calculated, and you need to be monitored with what you do. It's unfortunate, it should be fun, kids should be kids, but if you want to go to that next level, you should say no to it except for something very specific.
So how much responsibility is on the parents to make sure they either monitor or teach or supervise or make sure that the social media content coming out is going to be viewed properly?
Like the
I'm
content
not
that
a parent, but
you said the content that they're putting out.
I would argue if you're going to be the parent, I mean, again, I'm not a parent, but if you're going to let them have that responsibility, then they need to understand how serious
The consequences that come with
Yeah.
it.
I think being a parent, you have to educate your kids like you would with anything. When we were growing up, it was stranger danger. If someone walked up to you, didn't know you, ran away. So you just had to teach your kids what's right, what's wrong, and try and make the best possible choices that are available to them, whatever the situation is. So social media falls in that same category. Like, educate them, be their friend, be their parent, be their disciplinarian, be their confidant, but educate them so they are confident that they can make the right decision and learn from that decision one way or the other as time goes on. That's the best advice that I can be. And I have 2 young kids, and I'm going through it right now, and I have a long road ahead of me, hitting high school and puberty and junior high, and I got all that. So,
So Kristen Raftery has a really good question, which is, how much of an impact do the athletes' parents have on the recruiting process?
Hold on, what? Say that again. Say that again. Sorry.
How much of an impact do the athletes' parents have on the recruiting process?
So
His look says it all.
Yeah.
Josh just looks at it all.
Well, so just like a
lot.
school will follow a player, once they get to a certain point in the recruiting process, they'll check in on parents and see what their posts are. I mean, you have to look at it like this. A college coach, this is their job, and they make pretty good money, or they're climbing the ladder to try to make pretty good money, which means they got to win to keep that money, or they got to have a solid program. To have a solid program, grades need to be there because you need kids on the field, but you also need the stability and the support of families. If times are tough, you don't want a kid that's going to transfer after one tough time. So I definitely think the structure with the family, getting to know the parents, making sure the family environment's the right fit for each one. So the best way I can answer that is just more than you think. The impact of parents, their social media activity, their reputations is just as important as a kid. So the best way I can answer that is more than you think.
Agreed.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, we would bring in the whole, when we would finally get a recruit on campus, we would have the whole family in, and talk about everything, everything from finances to values, and, how often you're going to be able to come see your kid play, is travel an issue? So, I mean, they're involved, they're a part of that 4-year or 2-year, journey with you. So I think you have the best answer, more than you know.
All right, well, you know what?
Does anybody want to address this other question about high school feeder teams? Or are we going to skip right through that one?
Well, you know what? I do have something to say about high school versus club ball. It might not answer this question specifically, but LVR is not against high school. We believe that high school baseball provides something we can't. It provides that 5 to 6 days a week in a dugout with the same kids, the same coaches, that grind that you have to do, going to school every day, and weights and conditioning and all that you have to do together. That creates a bond. When you're with an LVR or a program like that, you're together 3, maybe 4 days a week, and then when you travel, maybe that's why we get along a little bit better, because you're not around each other all the time and you start to hate each other. But it does create a positive bond and create a work ethic for kids and how to deal with each other and how to mature being around other people that are from different cultures, different backgrounds, different social class, etc. But we encourage our guys to play the high school season if it fits for them. There are some people it doesn't fit because the school just doesn't have baseball or whatever it may be, the age difference and gaps, but whatever it is, the feeder teams for high school, that's a different one. You just have to look at who's coaching it. Is it the high school coach coaching it, or is it just somebody else? A dad, a young guy, a kid who just graduated, or is a varsity player trying to coach a 14U team to make some money. All those factors have to be, considered, and then you have to weigh that against your other options.
For development too.
Yeah, I mean, the whole goal about playing is development and your long-term outlook. So college, do they look at high school feeder teams over the summer and fall? They do not, because high school feeder teams typically aren't playing the events that an LVR or clubs like that are. So you're hopeful you have a good coach that's training you and developing you the right path. But you just have to be objective of who you are as a player, what your needs are, what your goals are, and make that decision for yourself. There's not a right or wrong answer for most kids. A lot of times you can win either way. You just have to write all your goals out, write out your expectations, and see where it nets out, the pros and cons. And that's where you go from there.
One more thing to add, that I think what LVR does really, really well, and how we, structure practices, is having the coach to player ratio at a low ratio, because sometimes you get some of these programs, and I'm not saying here, I'm saying all over the country, to where you have 2 coaches, right, but you have 20 players. Like, how often is that that lesson or that drill going to get kind of implemented into a player's brain when, especially at a feeder team, they're 13, 14 years old, they know everything, right? So you got a couple kids looking here, a couple kids looking there, then they miss something. Then you have 2 or 3 kids that actually get it. So it's like that ratio is so important, I think, and I think we do a really good job, and the LVR does a really good job with having transparency throughout the whole coaching staff of, okay, what kid does this really well? How can we make this practice flow better? Evan's the pitching guy, Shawn's the catching guy, King's the catching guy, outfield guy, infield guy, and I'm sure we have a couple other coaches that can, at a phone call, drop everything, come out there and coach. That's played at a high level. So I just think that's really important, because building relationships as a coach to a player, I think, is really, really important. And I think Jeter said that too in an interview that he had with Joe Buck. He says it's not the fact that I was the best player or won this many World Series and how I got my point across. It was more of building relationships with your teammates so they would trust you of what you were saying. And that's what I think we're trying to do as an organization, is they trust what we are trying to implement to them so they can go where they want to go in the future. Because that's the only reason why I'm doing this, is so they have something to look forward to in the future, and they're getting what they really need from us. So that's what I got.
The only thing I have to add is I think there's a good balance between club and high school. I think you should never be around the same coaches for 12 months, and you should never be around the same teammates for 12 months. When you go through school, you don't have the same first, second, third, fourth grade teacher. You move on to somebody new, different class, different environment, shake things up. So I think it's good for players to play partial season with a high school and play with certain players, and there's different dynamics, the 5-6 days a week. Like he talked about earlier in Texas, like playing the guys down the street. Like, I think it's great to have those high school rivalries, play against your buddies. And then I also think it's good to get back and play with different guys and go to different tournaments. I think it's good to get guest play a little bit out of state and get thrown into that environment, because I know when I went to college, like going to Oklahoma by myself, like it was scary. So like kids today won't have that. They'll know 6 of the guys on their college team because they played against them in Georgia and Florida. So I think there's this good balance that I think all of us have to be on the same page, including myself, of like there's pros and cons to everything. But I think 12 months rolling with the same guys, because if you're the top shortstop on a club team or the top shortstop on a high school team and you don't have that guy below you pushing you, then you may not get better or get to your max potential. Where if you're the starting shortstop at your high school but you roll to a club team and you get pushed over to second base or outfield, who knows, maybe when you hit college you're going to play outfield and it's better for you. So I think that there's just a balance between both, and I think that we all have to realize that we're all here for the kids, and so what's in the best interest of the kids. And sometimes it's individually. We've had players that have been on Team USA and it's like they need to go do all that stuff, so we miss them for tournaments, which hurts our team, but it's better for that individual kid. And you just got to put ego aside and just what's best for the individual kid is best for the individual kid. So I just think there's a happy balance between both, and as long as there's open communication between the club coach, the high school coach, and the parents, that's the key. As long as there's open communication and you're you're telling them, and hey, here's what we're going to do, but we'll be here for this, but we're going to go there. We should all be good, but it's the problem when it's last minute and you're like, hey, by the way, we're over here, and then it creates that divide. But I support high school baseball. Kids should play high school baseball and try to win state and have bragging rights for sure.
Yeah, kids should play high school baseball. No, I coach both. I coach at Faith and I coach here. And when I first moved back home, I talked a lot with Evan, and there was there was not a good relationship, between high school and just club, scout ball, whatever you want to call it in general. And, having been on both sides, I do both. I coach some guys for LVR that I coach at Faith. And, again, Evan said it really well. It's about communication. I think that playing spring baseball for your high school is one of the greatest things that you can do. I have a lot of fun coaching it. The intensity, I don't even know how the game itself is almost elevated, but over the summer, if you have a big opportunity to play in an event or you have a good opportunity to go anywhere and do something, even if it's a vacation. High school summer ball is not make or break whether or not you're going to be on the roster, at least for us. So I think it's just important to make sure you identify what you need to do and where you're trying to go. If you just want to play and get as many at bats and you're going to have an opportunity to do that for your high school in the summer, do it. If you want to push yourself and you have an opportunity to go somewhere, do it. But you just got to communicate, and like I said, I coach both and it works great, and I think we've started to see some good things come out of it. So
hey, before we go on to the next question, I want to touch upon, because I believe at this table I'm the only one who went to junior college before I went to Division I. Brad Maloff, also, who's not here, he went junior college and then went to UNLV, Division I. Junior college is a great stepping stone for development and extremely competitive baseball for the people who need it. I was a good athlete out of high school, but I didn't take the weight training and the weightlifting is as serious as I should have at the time.
You never heard of that?
I was a big soccer guy, so I relied on speed and agility and quickness. But junior college, for those guys that need one more year of development, or maybe they're the young kid, which we saw a question about holding back to be on the right age and whatnot. We'll get to that in a second, but if you're a young guy that came out early, junior college is a very good route, and it's not to be looked down upon. CSN is, and there are 20 years. I was the very first team of CSN.
Dang.
And they've built an amazing program out there, and it's nationally ranked every year. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a great stepping stone. It gives kids one more year, especially males. We don't mature socially as quickly as females do, so it's great for us to learn how to live on our own, not have mom take care of us, so on and so forth. And then we learn how to lift weights, manage our homework, manage school, social life, all that. And it's really good baseball, especially if you get at some of those better schools. So do not look past JUCO. And for the kids that may not have a path academically, junior college is perfect because they help you get through your core classes. They have guidance counselors that will help you get to the next level. They'll tell you what classes to take to knock out your core, so then you can hit your major at those 4-year schools after the fact. So I stress, do not look beyond that. Don't get wrapped up. Vegas, it's easy to get wrapped up in the Pac-12 and D1, but junior college is a very, very, very good route. Okay. I made it to Division I from there. I got an associate's degree and I got a bachelor's degree. So technically I have 2 college degrees, even though it's really only one. But, so don't look past it. It really does set you up for the future.
That's a good one to add right there. So the last question that we'll take today came from, it's kind of off topic a little bit, and honestly probably can take on a whole segment, a whole session on its own, but LG Lunchbox asks, what's your opinion on redshirting between 8th and 9th grade or freshman year in college, would you homeschool a player so they can reclassify down in high school? So essentially, one of the more popular questions out there, should we hold our kids back?
I was held back, but I was held back in first grade. We had moved cities, and I started young. I'm an August birthday, so I was the youngest in my grade. So I ended up getting held back just because I was an idiot in the classroom, and I used to sit on Ziploc bags like they were whoopee cushions. So I ended up getting held back in first grade. Fun fact right there, you guys didn't know about me. You see a lot of 8th graders getting held back. What I've noticed here in Vegas is a lot of kids start school early. Maybe it's the town, people working at the casinos want to get their kids in school early, get them out of daycare, and then they find out 18 years old. So graduation is now Memorial Weekend. So to me, June is like the first month that you should be the oldest of your grade. June, July, kind of those hybrid months, you could go either way. I think from August on, you should be the oldest of your grade. But when you talk about holding somebody back, like there's a lot of variables, and that's something you have to decide in your household, your parents, the kid, if it's something you want to do, something you're comfortable with. I don't tell anybody they should do it. That's not my place to tell anybody what they should do with their life. I just know for me it was a huge benefit. Had I not got held back in first grade, I would not have ended up at Oklahoma. I would not have got a college scholarship that I got, which basically gave me a free education. And came out of school debt-free. So, I mean, it was a huge impact on my life, but that's one individual case. There's nothing wrong with being the older one, especially if colleges are going to give out the money. I know that they'll still look at the younger guys, so it's not a knock on that, but bigger, stronger, faster. You have the 12 months of growth, put more muscle on, put more velocity on, put more speed on. It could be the difference of a $5,000 scholarship or a $50,000 scholarship. So, not that I'm promoting it and telling people to do it, but I'm definitely not against it. But you have to decide that in your household if it's beneficial, if you guys can do it. I know a lot of people can't have their kid at home by themselves. And I know a lot of the excuse would be, well, he's so academically, ahead. Well, then he'll be academically ahead for the next 4 years. Maybe that's a good time that you put him in some computer stuff. I mean, learning computers is the next wave. So, I don't know. I believe in it, but I'm not somebody who's going to go push it on anybody. That's not my right. I'm blessed that my son's an October birthday. He's in the grade he's going to be in, so I never have to make that decision as a parent. But I would have no problem doing it.
And then on the college side of things, as a college freshman, is that
yeah,
one?
just redshirting as a freshman.
So redshirting as a freshman, I think both of the ways you really don't have a say-so in how you or why you're redshirting. One is because it's a medical redshirt and you get hurt, which, I don't wish that upon anybody. And then number two is because you don't get the playing time that you want. So with that being said, I think what needs to go into the decision of the school that you're going to, at least for me, how it was, is look at, before you commit to a school or sign a NLI, you definitely want to go and look at the depth chart. Know who's at that school. Are you going to go and sit? Are you going to redshirt? Are you going to get your playing time that you want? Right? Are you going to go in and make an impact in that, or are you going to go and make an impact in that school right away? So, I think, and we're just touching on the basic stuff of how you get looked at or how you should go about recruiting. But when you actually get to college and you step foot on campus, it becomes a total, complete ball game. Like, you walk into the locker room, and as an 18-year-old kid, you're looking at 20, 21-year-old, sometimes 22, 23 grown men. Like, it's like, wow, like these guys look like MLB players, at least for me, because I was 5'7", 130 pounds coming out of high school, so everybody looked big to me. So
still do.
Just yeah, exactly. I mean, but just kind of understand where you're going to go, who's there, who's the coach, where's he been, what kind of philosophy do they play? Do they play small ball? Do they like to hit? All of that stuff goes into play whenever you're trying to make this decision for the school. Academics, that's been a big decision for everything. So, yeah, it's just understanding where you're going and where you're going to make that impact. And I think I'll leave it at that.
Let me add one thing here. So through this whole process, I've got to know a lot of coaches. I actually was on the coach with a Pac-12 coach earlier today, and I actually asked him some questions for this. And one of the things I asked him was like, what's the hardest thing about freshmen on campus, freshmen playing college baseball? And he said the guys that they bring in, they've never sat in their life. They bring in, the top 7-8 guys of their positions, of their club teams, of their high school teams, and those guys have probably never sat their whole life. But guess what? You're going into a school where everybody at that school has probably never sat a club game, a high school game, a youth game, a little league game. And so when you go in, if you're the freshman shortstop and you got a junior ahead of you, you're probably not stealing his job. You're waiting for him to go in the draft. You might have to wait 2 years. So can you sit? Can you be part of the team? Can you learn to run bases? Can you learn to pick signs, be part of the team? Or will you transfer out after your freshman year because you want to go somewhere else and try to fight for a spot somewhere else? And so that was the biggest thing he said is trying to get these guys to buy in that it's a 3-4 year process, and all these guys have come in and never sat. And it reminds me of a story of a guy that I grew up with in Diamond Bar, that he was a legit AA prospect, and when he got called up to AAA, he got put as like the fourth infielder, fourth outfielder, and he had to sit. And he said he lost his mind, and he said he had never sat his whole life. He didn't know how to handle it, and in that environment, it probably cost him a shot at the big leagues. And so it's okay to sit when you're young. It's okay to sit out a couple games. Parents, don't freak out if your kid's sitting for a couple tournaments. We're all going to sit at some point, unless you're Mike Trout or unless you're Bryce Harper. But, we're talking about the minority of this sport. So understand that, like, there is a process. It's okay to sit. It's okay to, it goes to the red shirt. If you red shirt, it just gives you that one extra year to get bigger, stronger, faster. Because if you go sit in some of these dugouts for minor leagues or colleges, these guys aren't small. Even Altuve, who's 5'6" with a World Series ring in 2017, that was for you, Rex.
Where's the trash can?
He's jacked. He's physical. He's got tools. So just remember that when you're going into this process. Don't expect to be a starter. Now, the last thing I want to add to that is when you do the college recruiting process, look at see who the commits are ahead of you and coming in with you. Because if you're a catcher and that school has a sophomore catcher, a freshman catcher, and an incoming catcher, and you're coming in with him, you got 4 guys to pass in the next 4 years. Look for the guys that have junior catchers, senior catchers that you can learn from a year and then take their spot and move over. A few years ago, Oral Hershiser was in the cages and he was working with a pitcher from Gorman, and he was a sophomore on varsity, and he asked him how much he pitched. He said, not that much. And Oral Hershiser's response was, how cool is that? You get to sit and learn from varsity guys and you're not wearing down your arm, and then you could take their spot as a junior, senior, and probably not what he was expecting from Oral Hershiser of like, you should be pitching all the time. It was the exact opposite. Sit, learn, rest. You can get your arm strong, healthy, till it's time to take your turn. So just don't panic if you're not playing at any age. Guys, it's like popcorn. You put it in the microwave, you put it on the same time, everybody pops differently. So that's what I got. Go ahead, King.
You keep. No, I just wanted to say my last thing was, like, this process, I think it's great that we all had different times, different processes. It's all different for everybody. Like, we're just trying to provide some different ideas so you know what to expect. But, like, don't be upset if you're the last kid on your high school team to, pick where you're going to school. Or, like, at the end of the day, like, ours is just about getting guys to college. So just understand you're all on a different path. You're all going to go through it differently, and be patient with it. Like, there's no rush to pick a school. There's no rush for any of it. Just, let it come to you and be patient with it, because everyone's going to go through it differently.
Sweet. All right. Well, apparently there's a 1 hour time limit, and so we're 1 minute to go. So that's a wrap for today. Go ahead and email or DM or talk to your coaches about any other questions or any of the topics that you'd want the coaches to talk about. Thanks for joining us. And we'll
Bregman for president.
We'll see you next month.